You're not going to want to miss today's episode. Today, we've got a ranger from Everglades National Park coming on the show to talk about everything you need to do and see while you're visiting Everglades National Park. So put your seatbelts on.
Because here we go.
This is RV Destinations Podcast.
All right, we'd like to welcome everybody here to the show. This is RV Destinations Podcast. We'd like to thank our YouTube viewers.
Yeah, we have viewers that are viewing us, that are tuning and viewing.
And then also all the people out there in your car that's listening to us via the different podcast platforms out there. So thank you for being here.
And I'm kind of sounding like Phoebe from Friends when she sang Smelly Cat and everybody loved it. That's how I am sounding today. So hopefully everybody loves the sound.
You do sound a little nasally today.
I am a little nasally. So I've got my tissues. I've got my cough drops. I have my cup of medicine. So I am rip-roaring and ready to go. Let's do this.
All right. Well, we're really excited about today. As we said in the intro, we've got a ranger coming back on the show today. We're going to talk about Everglades National Park. If you've not been there, we're gonna give you all the reasons why you want to come.
Yeah, I'm excited about this because we have gone through Everglades National Park, but we've never stopped and spent any time there.
Yeah, we did. We stopped at one of the visitor center. We did a little trail, a little boardwalk kind of thing, and came back.
Are you sure that was me?
No, that was you. That's when we stayed at Chokoloskee Island.
Right, I remember that.
Yeah, we did.
Okay.
But anyway, we've got a guest that we need to introduce so we can join in on the fun.
We do.
You want to take it from there?
We have Ranger Daniel Blankenship with us. Hi, Daniel. How are you?
Good, and you?
I am fair to Midland. Fair to Midland for sure. But okay, so you were telling us about your role because Everglades National Park, I don't think people realize this, is the third largest national park out there. It's huge. It covers over 1.2 million acres. And to put that in perspective, Yellowstone covers over 2 million. So it's a huge national park. So what is your role there in the park?
Yeah, so I'm a supervisory ranger. The entire park is, it's massive. It's split up into multiple districts. We have one of them at the northern part of the park is the Shark Valley District. We also have the Gulf Coast District, the Flamingo District to the south, and then on the eastern side with the main entrance is the Royal Palm District. So I'm a supervisory ranger. I supervise a team of colleagues of other park rangers that work all within that Royal Palm District.
Oh, awesome. Now, how long have you been a ranger?
I started rangering back in 2007. So I've been with the Park Service for getting close to 20 years now.
Oh, wow. Now, is this like a childhood dream, or did you just kind of land in it somehow, or tell us your story?
I always was interested in, doing things, being outside. Whenever I was in college, I worked for state parks as a state park naturalist. Whenever I graduated college, I was a wilderness guide out in Utah. And then, I ended up doing a road trip, stopping off at various different national parks. And then because of my degree, because of my interest in kind of understanding and being outside, I just kind of fell right into a position with the National Park Service as an interpretive ranger.
Gotcha. Now, this is a personal question. Did you grow up in the Boy Scout system?
No. I've had a lot of people end up asking me that, but no.
I did, and Caly and I have fully said we missed our calling in life. We should have been rangers.
Truly.
After I believe you're probably about the fifth or sixth ranger we've had on the show, all the way from Grand Canyons to Bryce Canyon to of course Yellowstone, now Everglades,
Arches,
and quite a few of them. And we're like, man, I want that job.
I know. And it's so fun. It's so fun talking to the rangers to hear how everybody got started into rangerhood, because it's fascinating. And I wish I would have known when I was younger that this was a possible career path. And that's why I love us talking about it on the podcast, because I'm hopeful that there's some kids out there too that are listening, or parents that are getting their kids involved in the Junior Ranger program. And like we've learned, you don't have to be a kid to enjoy the Junior Ranger program. You can be an adult and enjoy it. So.
Yep. We've had a lot of our podcast guests say that because we've never looked into it because, again, we thought it was all about the kids and different things like that. And so we've never done it. But now we have to start.
We need to Junior
program.
Ranger it.
Is there an age limit?
No, it's only for those that are truly young at heart. So I think the oldest Junior Ranger that I swore in was an 86-year-old woman out on one of the Apostle Islands.
Oh, nice.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, nice. All right. Well, we're going to start off. We usually start off the show with some fun facts, some different crazy things about the park. I don't know if any of these are crazy. Now, I pulled these from a bunch of different websites, so if any of these are untrue, please let us know. I usually try to find reputable sources, and I usually try to cross-reference them. Sometimes I will use a little chat GPT here and there, but anyway, feel free to give any kind of input or expand on any of these if you would like to. So the first one is it's the only place on Earth with both alligators and crocodiles.
Oh.
Yeah, the Everglades is the only ecosystem where the American alligator, which is a freshwater alligator, and the American crocodile, which is a saltwater, coexist. Are we doing good so far? Is that true?
That is true. That is true. This is the only place where the alligator and crocodile both end up maintaining the same area, same habitat. But I will throw in a little caveat. Do you know how many species of alligators there are in the world?
No idea.
Actually.
No idea.
2. So it kind of takes it down just a little notch whenever you realize, like, oh, there's only 2 alligators, and of course, this would be, one of the places where an alligator and crocodile coexist. It is special, but whenever you know that little fact, you're like, oh, well, there's only 2.
Maybe it's not too big of a deal.
Gotcha. It's like it's amazing.
No, that leads me to a question, and we kind of wander off in different directions, and we have to pull ourselves back on track. So I assume in the Everglades area that it's pretty much brackish water. Is that correct, or am I not correct?
So it depends upon where you go. Like you mentioned, the entire park is huge. So all along the coast of the park, it's primarily brackish water going into varying degrees of salinity until the flow of water actually dumps out into the Gulf of Mexico or into Florida Bay. But towards the heartland of the park, where we have what we refer to as sloughs. They're areas where the topography is just a little bit deeper than the areas around them. It's areas where, fresh water doesn't fully dry out even during our driest months. So our Shark River Slough, our Taylor Slough, the majority of what we refer to as the freshwater marl prairie and sawgrass prairie, all of that is freshwater. So I would say almost about 50% of the park is freshwater, and then the other 50% is saltwater, and then you have all these zones where the two end up mixing, and we have that brackish ecosystem.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's very, very interesting. Not what I would have thought of.
Yeah,
okay.
Me either.
So the Everglades is actually a slow-moving river, not a swamp. It flows about 0.25 miles per day from Lake Okeechobee to Florida Bay. Can you confirm that?
Yes, that is true. Yeah. So many people end up, whenever they first come to the Everglades, they end up saying like, "Oh yeah, I heard about this place. It's a swamp, right?" And yeah, park rangers here, we get very feisty about the S word. Like, oh, it's not a swamp. It's a river of grass, right? No, I'm kidding. We don't get feisty about it. But whenever you go out and you actually experience it, the water is crystal clear throughout the majority of that river of black grass sheet flow. It's not what people typically imagine whenever they think of swamps, which are, habitats dominated by trees. A lot of times the water is stagnant, kind of very thick, hazy. It's different. It's definitely different.
Gotcha. Okay, then number 3, and I have heard this, it has an invasive python problem. Burmese python introduced through the pet trade has devastated native wildlife, eating everything from raccoons to deer and even alligators.
Wow.
So is that still an issue, or has that been kind of controlled at this point?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's still an issue. We're kind of at a status quo. We don't know how many what the population actually is in the entire park. The park is just too big to actually know. But you touch upon a subject with that fact that is South Florida seems to be premium habitat for a lot of wildlife around the world to actually either grow if you're a plant or to thrive if you're an animal and flourish. So this park, one of the management struggles that we have is dealing with invasive species.
Gotcha. That makes sense. All right. The Everglades is the largest subtropical wilderness in the U.S., covering 1.5 million acres. It's the largest subtropical wilderness in the country and home to unique ecosystems. I think we've already kind of discussed that.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Let's see. It's home to the endangered Florida panther. Fewer than 200 Florida panthers remain in the wild, and the Everglades is the last stronghold of the Florida panther. Is that still an up-to-date number? Roughly 200 panthers left?
Yeah, more so about the state of Florida. We do have a small population of Florida panthers actually within Everglades National Park. Big Cypress National Preserve, which is just north of us, actually has more premium Florida panther habitat. They have a larger population than what Everglades National Park has.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
Okay.
interesting.
Okay. All right. And you're not going to find that anywhere else. Obviously, the Florida panther, I get what I'm getting at, but
You're not going to find the Florida panther anywhere else.
well, I mean, are there panthers anywhere else in the United States? I guess there are. No. They're just not called Florida panther? No?
Oh, right. Yeah. So the mountain lion, it's been divided into 28 subspecies. They're one of the most versatile, adaptable animals that we have. It's known as the cat that has more names than any other mammal. They exist over 110 degrees of latitude, going from the Straits of Magellan in South America almost all the way up throughout about halfway up through Canada. They exist from sea level all the way up to 14,000 feet in elevation in every kind of habitat. And one of the subspecies that's been separated from the rest of the populations of mountain lions in Florida is what we refer to as the Florida panther. And
very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
See, this is why we have rangers, because you and I would never have that information, and even if we said it, it wouldn't sound as cool as when Ranger Daniel just told us.
He just made it sound so cool.
He did.
So now I believe the pictures I've seen, of course, I've never seen a Florida panther in person, but the pictures, they seem like they're a much smaller cat than, let's say, a mountain lion and I don't know, Yellowstone,
Really?
wherever. Is that true? Are they more on the smaller side, or is it just my perception was off?
Yeah, they're about the same size, roughly.
Oh, okay.
About 150 pounds for a full-grown adult, somewhere around there. The one thing is that where they tend to get larger is whenever they have a surplus of food to eat. So I would say like maybe Florida panthers might be a little bit more on the skinnier side in comparison to some of the mountain lions that you find out west that primarily feed upon like bighorn sheep and have a ton of white-tailed deer to eat.
That makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah, it's kind of like an American.
Right, exactly. You stick an American in the Midwest, and they have all kinds of good, fatty, deep-fried foods to keep them nice and plump.
We're going to leave that one alone. All right, so the water in Everglades is super shallow. Despite its massive size, much of the water in the Everglades is less than a foot deep, so you can just ankle around.
Oh, interesting.
Imagine it's a lot like on the river where we lived. If you actually step on it, do you sink down in soot and mud and all that?
Yeah, you can. So the dominant bedrock that we have here is limestone. And we have what's known as marl. It's like clay platelet powdered sugar kind of mud from the dissolving limestone that ends up building up. And it's you definitely sink into it. But your facts are correct. Yeah, the majority of the park, even though we have this sheet flow of water, and there is varying depths to it. On average, it's about a foot, 2 feet deep.
So if you fall out of the boat, just stand
Just
up.
stand up.
Right.
Just stand up, folks. Or
If you
even
can.
sit up.
Right, exactly. All right, so the Everglades is one of only 3 places in the world designated as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, a wetland of international importance, and an international biosphere reserve. So all 3 of them combined, only 3 places in the world.
Oh, wow.
Is that still a fact?
That is still accurate. Yep, it's still a fact.
Okay, and what is that? Being a UNESCO World Heritage Site, that's a popular one. We hear that a lot.
Mhm.
Does that give the park any special benefits, or what does that actually
Yeah,
mean,
what's
other
it
than
mean?
a title and a little diploma you can hang on your wall or something?
Yeah, well, one of the things, one of the cultural aspect of the park, specifically going back to a long history of different Native American tribes that have existed in South Florida from 1000 BC up until the 1700s, the Tequesta and Calusa being 2 of the more dominant populations of people. And we see things like shell mounds, Calusa canoe trails, because they actually dredged their own canoe trails, linking village sites to village sites. Very interesting group of people. So we have a lot of this cultural history, and getting those types of designations. Really, kind of the impact of that for the park is that we get a lot of international visitors. People, over in Europe that have heard of Everglades National Park, and it's been talking to them. It's been their dream. Going to like some of our like featured boardwalks, like the Inhinga Trail. I was talking with some of my colleagues the other day. This time of year in the winter, we can go to the Inhinga Trail and like sit there and just listen. And over the course of 15, 20 minutes, maybe you can count 5, 10 different languages that are being spoken from people just coming from all over the world to kind of see and experience this unique place.
Sure.
That's really cool.
Yeah, that is really cool. I know most of the national parks that we've spoke to are UNESCO World Heritage Site, or
Yeah.
at least that comes up
Several.
on the show quite often. All right, in the 20th century, drainage project for farming and development shrank the Everglades by 50%, leading to massive restoration efforts today. It was almost destroyed. Is that I do remember reading that somewhere, but that's all under control now. That's all been completely restored. Is that correct?
It hasn't been completely restored. Starting back in several years now. We've developed what we're referred to as the Comprehensive Everglades Restoration Plan, SERP. And it's whenever it first came out, it was a 50-year plan. Now it's being extended. It's a plan that involves partnership between the Army Corps of Engineers, state government, as well as the National Park Service, and several other entities are involved as well. Because starting back in the late 40s, going all the way into the early 70s, for flood mitigation, as well as to drain off some of that massive sheet flow of water, to allow for agriculture, to allow for development. There was a lot of impacts that have occurred because of a lot of that mitigation. So now we're in the process. We're in this plan, kind of step by step, and it goes all the way up to Orlando, the headwaters of the Everglades and the Kissimmee River, going through Lake Okeechobee. I mean, it's a massive undertaking, but it's a plan that we're still in pursuit of trying to get a historically more accurate kind of ecosystem to Everglades National Park by restoring the flow of water.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think it was a documentary that I think I saw that was on that, how it was being destroyed, and they had to change, because they were diverting water and a bunch of different things for the farmlands, correct? Isn't that kind of part
Yeah,
of the problem?
over 1,400 miles of canals were constructed
Jeez.
to end up diverting water from this natural sheet flow to help dry up the landscape. And now, part of that plan is how do you introduce water back to this unique ecosystem without flooding those developed areas?
Right.
So it involves a lot of partnerships, a lot of planning, and that's why it's such a long plan. Is because of you know uh, all the steps that are involved of trying to get a restored Everglades. It takes a while because we don't want to flood anybody.
Yep. No,
Right.
that makes
Yeah.
sense. All right, number 9. We got 2 more left here. Everglades is home to over 360 different species of birds. Bird watchers love the Everglades, which hosts everything from, I think it's roseate spoonbills to bald eagles. So a lot of different bird watching in the area. It's a bird watching mecca, I assume.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, which maybe I can get into a little bit later on, but the fluctuation of our wet and dry season ends up creating essentially a system that has supplied birds food for thousands of years. And because of that, in the wintertime, birds from all over North America, Central America, even South America have developed migrations to actually come to the Everglades to end up, nesting, having these rookeries of tens of thousands of birds historically.
Yeah, that's exciting. The last number 10 is the mangroves are a natural hurricane shield. The Everglades coastal mangroves help absorb storm surges and protect Florida from hurricane damage. I could see that.
Oh
'Cause
yeah.
the shallow
Yeah.
water,
Mm-hmm.
the mangroves, I could certainly see
Yeah.
that. So, but it probably does some damage to the Everglades, doesn't it? If it
Yeah,
gets a direct hit.
yeah. Whenever Hurricane Katrina, Wilma, Ian, there's always an impact. But the mangroves, especially whenever you take into consideration just how flat Florida is, southern Florida,
Mm-hmm.
uh,
Yep.
that mangrove buffer line, where we'll have a storm surge of 10 feet, let's say, maybe it goes inland no more than 2-3 miles because of, I mean, if it was without the mangroves, that storm surge could have gone, across the landscape for tens of miles. But instead, the mangroves really provide that amazing buffer to keep storm
Mm.
surges from hurricanes from going that much further inland.
Gotcha. Okay, well, I did really
Yeah.
well. All 10 of
Yeah.
them are
Did.
true.
Yay!
So-
Good job, honey.
Well, and it's not like we had one where we were debating on the dates, and it turned out that we were both right.
Yeah.
Because it was founded on one day but incorporated as a city on another day. We were arguing about those 2 dates. But anyway, so let's jump in now to why RVers want to come here. And the first thing first question I have is when we were doing our research, we found the Everglades.org and the MPS.gov website had 2 different numbers as far as how many visitor sites there
Yeah.
are. So one says 5, one says 4. So how many visitor sites or visitor centers, are there in Everglades National Park?
So currently we have 3.
3. Okay.
We're introducing a new
Wow.
number.
Yes.
Okay. Gotcha.
So the Gulf Coast Visitor Center ended up
Yep.
receiving some damage. It was an older visitor center, some damage from Hurricane Ian, and the park had already dedicated that visitor center would be rebuilt. So currently we only have 3, but the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Visitor Center is currently being constructed and is slated to be opening in the next year or 2.
Oh,
Now-
okay.
now
And
is that
that's
gonna
taking
be-
the place of the Gulf Coast Visitor Center.
Yeah. Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's the one we visited all those years ago. So we stayed, there's a campground on
Chokoloskee.
Island. We stayed there, and then we came over, and I think we went to the Gulf Coast Visitor Center.
I do not
We
remember
were
that.
there briefly.
Okay.
We walked on a boardwalk
that
trail,
weird?
and then that's it.
So
Okay.
weird.
And so, I don't. Again, I don't know that the listener here, if you're on YouTube watching us here, if you get maybe flash some pictures up for the YouTube viewers, but get the size of this park. Again, this stretches all the way over from, let's call it Marco Island area.
Almost Marco Island.
Yeah, not quite, but all the way over to that, and then all the way down to where you Homestead and that area where you're heading into the Keys. In all that area. So 1.2, 1.5 million.
1.5 million acres. And again, to put that in perspective, Yellowstone is 2.2 million. So it's the third largest national park in the United States. It is a huge national park.
Yep. So we usually encourage RVers to first stop at a visitor center to
Yes.
kind of get your lay of the land and what you want to do. Would you suggest that? So right now we've got three. In which are the three visitor centers that are open up today, and we're recording this in February
of 2025. I know. What's
So
today?
what visitor centers right now are open for someone to stop in and get some more information?
Well, we do have a contact station still set up there at Gulf Coast, close to where the Gulf Coast Visitor Center is. So people still can stop there if they have any questions or anything like that while we're waiting for the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Visitor Center to be completely opened up and built. So if RVers are coming, down the 41 from the northeastern side, they can definitely stop there. Also along Highway 41, to share the map.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that'd be
Please
fabulous.
do.
Sure. Yeah, so the Gulf Coast Visitor Center is up at the northeastern part of the park, and then right around the middle of the Tamiami Trail, we have the Shark Valley Visitor Center, which is also home to one of the popular activities of taking tram tours and biking this 15-mile tramway, which leads out to an observation tower. And then if you enter the park coming down Palm Drive from Homestead, you can go to the Ernest F. Coe Visitor Center. And then driving the main park road all the way down to Florida Bay is the Flamingo District, where we have the Guy Bradley Visitor Center.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
Okay.
Wow. That's incredible. I love visitor centers. We've always told everybody that we've ever have done podcasts on national parks is stop at the visitor center. It's just a great place to begin a trip into a national park to really help you to decide, hey, I've got one day here. I've got 3 hours. I've got one walk I can do or one hike, and going to a visitor center and talking to a ranger can really help you plan out your trip so that you get the most out of it, the most enjoyment, and get to see really all the stuff that you're hoping to see while you're there at the park.
Yep.
Plus, don't forget to take in your national park book and get it stamped.
Exactly.
Yes.
That's
I say that because I forget to take ours in all the time.
All right. Well, why don't we? I'm actually on the national park nps.gov right now, and I'm on Everglades, and I'm going to just kind of go through these and maybe can give us some comments on different things. And these are the different things to do in the park, so I'm sure you're probably familiar with all these. But the first one is the ranger-led programs. Maybe talk a little bit about briefly just some of the different programs and how they would sign up for that to come and enjoy the park.
Yeah. We have a varying different types of ranger-led programs and activities depending upon which part of the park that you're visiting. Everything from what we call wet walks, where and it sounds intimidating until you actually get out there. But we lead people on these wades where they sometimes wade out to as deep as up to your hips, out into water, into cypress domes, these like beautiful cathedral-like areas with cypress trees, cypress knees loaded with epiphytes, tropical plants. really kind of a worthwhile. I just wanted to to say
Yeah.
like it's a experience that most people end up walking away from with that like wow factor because it's not what they expect. We also do things like bike rides, and canoe trips and kayak programs at the various different districts. All of those, because of capacity issues, you have to make reservations for. And if you go to the website, which you're on, and you utilize our calendar, you can pick out which programs that you're interested in joining and see if the majority of our ranger-led activities and programs you just simply show up for. But there's a few of them where we have the capacity issues that you do have to make reservations ahead of time, specifically those that have equipment needs like bike rides, like canoe trips, and even
Mhm.
our wet walks. But other than that, there's tons of guided hike activities, ranger presentations, evening programs, star viewing, um, tons of different things to do in the park with the different ranger teams.
Now, are those all for a separate fee in addition to the park entrance fee, or are those free?
Yeah, so all of them, when your fee dollars that get you into the park, get you access to all of our ranger-led activities and programs completely for free.
Oh
Oh,
wow,
that's incredible.
that's really good. And can they reserve this? Did you say on the website they can do that, or they need to come in and reserve it?
Both.
Um,
Uh,
okay, okay.
Generally, the website and program descriptions give instructions for how to make the reservations, whether that's online, whether that's given one of the visitor centers a phone call, or even for coming in person. A lot of our visitors, they don't know about the activities until they show up at the different visitor centers. And whenever they do, we generally can sign them up right there as well.
That's awesome.
That is super cool.
Yeah, we'll have to do that going back. We come
I
down to
know.
we're actually Florida residents now as of
Yeah.
November about 8th,
November 8th-ish.
somewhere around there. But we come to the Keys every year during the holidays, and we'll have to definitely do that. Make a side trip to the Everglades and come do some of these programs. Now, when I think of Everglades, this is pretty much my entire life. You think of the Airboat Tours, and
Right.
I had never done an airboat tour until I don't know, a couple years ago, and
Mhm.
it's loud, it's obnoxious.
It
I
is
didn't
so
like
loud.
it. I really didn't like it.
I
But
know.
but I'm a weird person when it comes to some of that stuff. But
But there's
that
other tours that
no,
folks
no, I
can
want
do
to, I
outside
want
of
to, I
the
want to talk
airport.
about that.
Okay.
So I want to talk about the airboat tours, but also some of the you've got actually, I guess, big pontoons. I don't know what you would call
Mhm.
them that take people out on boat tours as well. So does the national park sponsor any kind of airboat tours, or are those all private companies that are contracted?
Yeah, so on the northern boundary of the park along Highway 41, there are three essentially commercial use agreements that the park has with three commercial companies. That's Everglades Safari Park, Gator Park, and Coopertown. And these three operations, they provide airboat tours that come into this northeastern corner of Everglades National Park. Yeah, they're not for everybody. They're generally about 30 minutes. We define them as the roller coaster ride experience of a boat tour. They can be loud.
Right.
You're essentially sitting in front of airplane propeller. But a lot of people do like them because they're fast. And they get that stereotypical what people think of kind of experience. In the
Mhm.
Gulf Coast District, they offer the wildlife viewing more slow 40 passenger, 2 hour pontoon boat tours that go out into the Thousand Islands region. And then all the way down south in Flamingo, they have two different types of boat tours. One of them that goes out into Florida Bay, loops around, and then one of them that actually heads back up into the backcountry. And because we're incredibly creative whenever we name things, that one is called the Backcountry Boat Tour. and it goes up the Buttonwood Canal through Coot Bay, out to Whitewater Bay, looping around, seeing the red mangrove habitat, crocodiles, manatees, various different birds, wildlife, tropical plants, that kind of thing.
That's fabulous. And I noticed also on the different tours that are available, if for folks that want to stay on dry land, they also offer that Shark Valley Tram Tour, which is about a 15-mile loop trail and takes about 2 hours. So, for people that are maybe like, yeah, I know it's the Everglades and it's water, but I want to stay on some land, there's that option as well.
Yeah, absolutely. There's tons of, and even the majority of our visitors, I would say, that show up without kind of planning ahead are not really expecting or prepared to do boat tours. So we also have a ton of different activities, Shark Valley, all the self-guided boardwalks and trails that people take advantage of. We also have a historic district to this park that not a whole lot of people know about.
Yeah, I had no idea.
That is the HM69 Nike missile base that is kind of towards the interior. And all winter long, we end up providing, this year it's at 2 p.m., but we provide these 2-hour guided tours of our Nike missile site, which is a site that has tons of just miraculous history for everything from, stories of the Cold War, the Cuban Missile Crisis, and we have a 40-foot missile that's on display.
Very cool. That is super cool.
I hadn't heard of that. Did you see that when you were doing your research? Because I didn't know
No,
about
I
that.
just, as he was saying it, I just stuck it into Google Maps, and sure enough, HM69 Nike missile base pops up.
Very, very cool.
Yeah, that is fascinating.
Yeah,
no, not at all.
But it makes sense, during the Cold War. I'm old enough to remember that, and we were doing a lot of different things. I remember having nuclear war test, or not nuclear. What am I trying to say? A nuclear bomb test, where we would run into the hall, or we'd get under our desk, kind of like the tornado drill. We'd have that. I remember that in. I guess it would have been elementary school.
Yeah, I remember that too. They always told us it was for an earthquake, which I thought was weird in the middle of Ohio, but roll with it, right?
No, we were always told it was a nuclear bomb. Kind of, you'd get under the desk and you would put your hand over your head.
I remember that, desk or doorway.
But yeah, these kids these days don't have to.
They're like,
deal
what
with
are
any
these
of
old
that.
folks talking
Right.
about?
All right, so now you got a lot of kayaking, paddling. You said you have a guided tour, but if an RVer has their own kayak, can they go out and just launch somewhere and paddle around themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. We have, the majority of the park, over 90% of the park, is either designated wilderness or is treated as wilderness. And we do have designated paddling trails, canoe trails for folks to end up doing. We also have a 99-mile the Wilderness Waterway, which connects Flamingo through all these like estuarial zones, connecting 99 miles all the way up to Everglades City for visitors to even do backcountry camping, going out staying on these elevated wooden platforms, a truly unique kind of backcountry camping experience. I really don't find it anywhere else. But yeah, paddling, if you have a boat, you are more than welcome to kind of put in anywhere within the park.
That's cool. Now, do alligators become an issue at any point with kayaking or your walks through the through the swamp?
Through the wet walks?
I'm not allowed to say the S word. I can't say the S word.
Through the not swamp.
Yeah, no, not really. Most people don't realize they actually purr if you tickle them underneath their chin. No,
I will take your word for that.
I probably shouldn't have said that. But
because there could be some kid like, "Hey, I heard this on the show, Mom. Watch."
Yeah. Please read the disclosures
Right.
at the end of the show.
Yeah. Your Honor, the ranger clearly stated. Yeah. No, they're generally very timid. Whenever we do wet walks, it of course is a number one concern of visitors, like what kind of wildlife, if we're going to be wading
Mm-hmm.
out into the water, what kind of wildlife. So we always talk to people about that. We stay in groups, and generally it's a non-issue. Even for canoeing and things like that, really they're intelligent animals. They
Mm-hmm.
are intimidated by boaters. They try to stay away from people in canoes to the best of their ability. They're beautifully adapted for the water, though. So, whenever we have had visitors that have had negative encounters with alligators, it's really stemmed down to two things. Either people have been feeding them, so they've developed a
Mm-hmm.
behavior of associating people with food, um, or people are in pursuit of those like heavenly Instagram photos, right?
Oh
They
yes.
see an alligator or crocodile sunbathing and they try to get as close as they possibly can without realizing the alligator and crocodile, as soon as they get spooked, they're never going to run away towards dry land. They're always going to charge where they feel the safest, which is deeper pools of water, which just so
Mm-hmm.
happens to be a lot of times where people are sitting in their canoe or kayak. So, anyway,
Gotcha.
stressful situation, but yeah, we it's really a non-issue whenever it comes to people using common sense, having these types of activities out in the park.
So
Yeah,
you've
so
you've yeah,
don't cover yourself in raw pieces of meat, while you're out there. Don't feed the animals.
yeah, you see these people in Yellowstone
Oh
approaching
my gosh, the
the
bison.
bison. I would keep wanting to say buffalo, but the bison, and then they get hit and they're shocked.
They're like, I can't
They
believe
get
the
nudged
bison
by.
attacked me. Well, yeah, you went over and tried to pet the fluffy cow. Don't pet the fluffy cow.
Exactly. Well, it's good to hear that on your ranger-led programs you didn't leave with 10 and come back with 9. Like, well,
Right.
hey, that's 90%. We'll take that.
We have a 90% success rate of bringing you back.
Yeah, that's good. I also see that you allow fishing in the national park. I assume you'd have to get your Florida fishing license and all that. I guess all that applies. But there's different spots that it looks like that you've got a picture on the nps.gov of a boat. So I
Mhm.
assume you can go out and do it by boat, or can you do it by bridge, or what
Yeah,
are some of the other
where
ways
can you
can you fish?
fish?
We have numerous places that you can fish, both freshwater and saltwater. You do have to abide by, Florida state requirements. So you have to have your Florida fishing license. I believe what if you're over the age of 16 or 14, something like that. Um, you'll have to double check that. But
Hmm.
yeah, if you have your Florida fishing license for either fresh or salt, um, the majority of the places you can fish, there's only like a handful of maybe 5 or 6 places that are closed to fishing, and those are all freshwater areas. Um, but Florida Bay, which is this 500,000 acre bay on the southern side of the park. On average, it's 3 to 5 feet deep. It's just where this incredibly flat plate, which is this limestone plate where southern Florida is situated on, is barely dipping below sea level. It's an amazing nursery for fish. So the Florida Bay, the southern portion of the park, 500,000 acre section of water, is kind of a fisherman's paradise, as it's been described by a lot of local fishermen and even charter fishing companies that have, take people out to go fishing.
Gotcha.
Yeah, because I know it's a big area. I know my mother-in-law, well, your mom and stepdad like to go down to that area to fish specifically throughout the Everglades because the fishing is just so phenomenal.
Yep,
Hmm.
exactly. Now there's I assume there's manatees in the area, and what other kind of cool marine aquatic animals are in the park?
Yeah, so everything from sawtooth fish to we have a healthy population of sharks. that you can often encounter out in Florida Bay. A lot of times they're just swimming along looking for fish, smaller species.
Mm-hmm.
Everything from Caribbean sharpnose to lemon sharks, blacktip sharks. The list just goes on and on and on. Spinner sharks. You can end up finding either along the boundary of the park in the Gulf of Mexico, Atlantic, or even in Florida Bay. We have the West Indies manatee. Um, you know, I feel like there's so much I can't even think
There's a lot of fish.
Yeah, there's a lot of fish that you can find in the park.
Right. Okay, now let's get to something that's near and dear to Caly and my heart, and a lot of our listeners, and that's hiking.
Yeah.
I guess I didn't realize when I was on. I think I was on a different website. I don't have that website up right now, but it looked like there were 10 or 12 different trails out there.
There's over 40 miles of hiking and walking paths throughout the park, which I thought was really impressive.
Now, what maybe tell us some of your favorite ones that you would recommend to our listeners, as far as like this is a gotta go hiking, or this is the trail you got to do when you come to Everglades.
Okay. What we end up telling most visitors whenever they come to the Ernest Cove Visitor Center, as far as like hiking trails, we do have a few long ones that I really enjoy, like the Long Pine Key Trail, which is about 7 miles. You can hike or bike it. It'll take you out to this really kind of amazing, the Pinelands Rocklands habitat, which is an endangered habitat, used to exist all the way up along this ridge extending into what is now the Miami region, right? Whenever they needed to develop it, was actually one of the first habitats that was clear cut for development. So we have this stand of the Pineland Rocklands habitat in the park that the Long Pine Key Trail goes through. So we have some longer trails, but most visitors, whenever they come to the park, they're just looking to see and experience the different ecosystems, because really that's this park. It's the first biologically significant national park. So they're wanting to see and experience different wildlife and different ecosystems. And for that reason, and we're a big water park, we do have a lot of trails, but we have a lot of trails that are relatively short, between a half mile to a mile. So even just driving down the main park road, you can see an overlook of wildlife at the Taylor Slough by doing the Inga Trail. You can do a short view of what the Pineland Rocklands habitat is by doing the Pinelands Trail. We have a tower that overlooks the Shark River Slough that you can get to by doing the short Paoki overlook. We have a boardwalk trail that goes along the interior of one of our tropical hardwood hammocks, one of our tree islands, called Mahogany Hammock. And then we have at West Lake, the West Lake Boardwalk is a short boardwalk that leads you out to kind of introduce you to the various different types of mangroves, the 4 species of mangrove trees that we have in the park. And then from there, going down to Flamingo, there's another short walk around Eco Pond that you can kind of start to see some of the birds, wildlife, waterfowl, and stuff like that. So it's not,
Gotcha.
I know that's not one trail, but it's kind of an experience. Like if you're in an RV and you're wanting to like see and experience the park, you could spend 2-3 hours doing all these short trails to see the different ecosystems of the park.
That makes sense.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I've heard, someone told me once that South Florida gets hot, and I'm not sure if that's true.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
I can't even imagine that there's any humidity in the Everglades.
Or mosquitoes.
But let's talk a little bit about maybe some of your favorite times you think, or what you think the good. Well, let me back up. When's the height of your season? I'm assuming that's going to be in the wintertime. But
Yeah,
you
when
tell
are you
me,
busiest?
right? And what are the shoulder
cool?
seasons? When's a fun time to come to the park? That's maybe not so crowded.
Our busiest seasons or busiest months are December, January, February, and March, which kind of coincides with our dry season where the temperatures are more moderate. Um, the 75 degrees during the day. The humidity level actually goes down because it's not raining every day. And then starting like May is whenever we get to our wet season, where somewhere on the Everglades there's a thunderstorm every day at 1 p.m. It's filling up that sheet flow of water, which is good, but it's also bringing 100% humidity, 98 degrees. You're just walking around sweating.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
As I like to say, it's a little saucy.
Right, yeah. And you brought up a good point, too. We do have 42 species, or right over 40 species of mosquitoes in the park.
Oh gosh.
What?
Only
There are varying species of those horrible little critters.
Dude, I just threw away my malaria medication.
Right, exactly.
We went to Africa last year. I don't know how I had leftover malaria.
No, that was different. We
Okay.
determined that
All
was
right.
different. You
You're
took
right.
all the malaria medication. I made sure you did.
But of the 40 plus species, I think it's only like around seven of them are ones that actually bite people, if that makes you feel better. But the worst,
No.
it doesn't. The worst of them is,
Still don't like them.
yeah, the worst is the salt marsh mosquito, which lives in those estuarial areas, the red mangrove forest, and they are thick during our summer months. But with a couple of cold snaps that push through their population, they become a lot more manageable, a lot more pleasant, actually down in areas like Flamingo and the Gulf Coast. All that being
I have
said,
never heard pleasant and mosquito
Oh,
in the same sentence.
it's Everglades acupuncture. It's a state of mind. It starts to feel good after a while. No, no matter
The cup is half full.
That's right.
right. No matter what time of year, though, I always encourage folks, as you're planning on what to bring, definitely bring bug spray, because
Yes.
even day to day, sometimes if there's no wind, you can always end up encountering mosquitoes. And the shoulder seasons are, November and April, really. Visitation is going down, but temperatures, just be aware, temperatures are starting to climb in both November and April.
So you can walk around without any other people in August. Let's say August 15th.
Yeah, and there's a reason.
Yeah, I know. I get it.
It's like, wow, I've got the whole park to myself. This is great.
What-
Me and these 47,000 species of mosquitoes.
Yeah. I mean, RVers tend to just stay away from Florida in the summer months, and they go
Yeah.
north. They go.
Yep.
That's why we all have wheels on our homes. But okay, so which area? We've got 3 visitor center, a 4th one coming back online soon. Which area would you say would be the busiest area inside of the park? Is there one, or are they pretty much all kind of the same flow of traffic?
I would say that Shark Valley, because the bike rides, the trams, it's over the past maybe 15 years, 20 years, it's just become more and more of an attractive, popular site and activity for even people from the local community from like Miami to actually make their way. If they're coming to the park, they'll go there, they'll ride bikes on the tram road. It's very busy. So if you're planning on going there, parking is an issue during our busy season through those months, December through March. After 10 a.m., 10 or 11 a.m., parking starts to become an issue. So just be aware of that. Weekends also, parking is an issue there. So definitely plan ahead of time. Try to get there early if you are planning on that activity. And then as far as, it really the rest of the park during the busy season around the visitor centers, Ernest Cove and the Royal Palm region of the park, we're very busy. But also down in Flamingo, they're busy with a lot of the fishermen and the boaters that are hauling down their flats boats going out. So yeah, we're pretty much every part of the park is busy. It's more or less what they're busy with, and we're busy with
Gotcha.
different types of visitors, different types of visitors.
Gotcha. Now, for those that are maybe not as mobile and can't do hiking or maybe not even biking, is there a way to visit some of the park in a car, like drive up and get out type situations, or are you pretty much going to have to get on a boardwalk or a hike or something of that nature?
Yeah, whenever I mentioned those 5 boardwalks going down the main park road,
Yep.
all of them that are incredible, all of those are wheelchair accessible. So they're all incredibly flat and short. So yeah, even we found that even people with mobility issues, they're still capable of getting out. We also, we get a lot of veterans that visit the Nike missile site. Some of them are dealing with mobility issues. We do offer, for them to actually utilize their vehicles for the tour, so that they can still kind of experience that history and be a part of the story that we're telling. So there's still a lot of activities that folks can do, including like the boat tours and the tram tour. You know,
Yep, yep. Okay, that's good.
Oh,
We want to
fabulous.
be respectful of your time. I have a couple more questions here.
Sure.
We're approaching the 1 hour mark here, and we want to really let you go because I know you got a lot more to do. And you said it is your busy season, so we
Yeah.
really appreciate you coming on the show. But let's talk about camping. I know there's over 29 private campgrounds outside of the park,
Right.
but you also have some camping inside the park. Is that correct?
And some very unique camping options.
Yeah, so we have 2 campgrounds within Everglades National Park, and that's the Long Pine Key campground as well as the Flamingo campground. Both of them have pump stations, and an RV full hookup sites, or not full, but electric sites for RVers. Um, and tons of tent camping sites. But those are our 2 main campground facilities that we have.
Gotcha. Now,
And do you know offhand how large of a rig that the campgrounds can accommodate?
I do not offhand.
Usually it's
Oh,
like
actually,
30.
I just found it.
Did ya?
35 feet.
Okay, I was going to say
Yep.
usually it's 35 feet, but
Yeah.
yeah, we don't even look into the parks anymore because we've
Yeah,
got a
'cause
45
we've got a
foot.
45 foot,
Yeah,
so.
we don't even look. We just like
We
find
know
a
it won't
private.
fit.
But there's a couple of real nice places in Everglades
Yeah.
City.
Mhm.
You can go to even Miami
Right.
and stay in Miami
Mhm.
and get there really quickly because a lot of the visitor centers are, or at least a couple of them are on the Alligator Alley or Tamiami or whatever they call it there.
Miami.
Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. Highway 41, the Tamiami Trail.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So 2 more questions.
But we didn't finish about the unique camping because
Oh.
this is so we have the
Okay, I'm sorry.
campgrounds,
Right.
but then you also have the backcountry camping, which are I just saw that on the website, which is so cool. It's like these elevated wooden platforms above the water, and then you get your own porta potty.
Like in Bora Bora?
Yeah, but it's like this covered wooden little platform with a porta potty, and you can backcountry camp that way, which I thought was incredible.
That is really cool.
Yeah, so each one of those are only accessible by boat. So, and they're incredibly popular. Like I had mentioned before, for getting out into the wilderness and doing things like the Wilderness Waterway. They're popular with kayakers, canoers, and power boaters, fishermen, fisher people. Going out fishing, for the entire weekend. A lot of time we'll pull their boat up to those elevated wooden platforms. We have 3 different types of backcountry campsites for people to utilize: beach sites, ground sites, and the what we now call as chickees, or these elevated wooden platforms with a roof. If they're double chickees, it'll be 2 platforms connected by a bridge, and then in the middle of the bridge is a shared porta potty, and then there's also single chickees that individuals can end up utilizing.
Oh, how fun!
Isn't that so
that somebody
cool?
could kayak out there if they really wanted to and stay with a kayak out there?
Yeah. You can go to recreation.gov and kind of map out where you're thinking of going. Go to our website and look at wilderness trip planning. for actually, figuring out as well as reading through all the nuances, because planning a canoe trip in South Florida with strong tides and often strong winds, adds some challenges to it, but it's a worthwhile experience.
Okay, perfect.
Very cool.
Now can I continue?
Yes, now you may move
All
on.
right, so I've got two more questions for you. The first one being, share with us, if you don't mind, share with us one of the craziest stories you've got of either like a visitor or an alligator got stuck in a tree, or just some of the. And I'm sorry, I did not give you this information beforehand. I'm hoping you have a really fun story you can share with us. But you've been there. How many years have you been in Everglades? Did you say?
Yeah, I was
Oh,
was living in Flamingo whenever I was a seasonal ranger for 9 winters, and then I would winter down here, and then I'd drive to northern Wisconsin. And I'd summer in at the Apostle Islands National Lakeshore,
Oh, okay.
where I was an
Okay.
island ranger. So I bounced back and forth for 10 years, and then just recently I left. I left Everglades National Park about 10 years ago, and I went to Sequoia and Kings Canyon, Cape Cod National Seashore, and then just recently, a few years ago, I came back to Everglades National Park. I missed it after being away for so long, and after falling in love with this place. And I'll share with you.
That's
I'll share with you.
You can leave out all names.
I'll share with you my most embarrassing ranger story.
Okay.
All
Okay.
right.
Sounds good.
So we lead free canoe trips in the park, and my very first season, I led a canoe trip at 9 Mile Pond. And what tends to happen throughout the park is as water levels drop during the dry season, the alligators really start congregating to the deeper pools of water. So me and 12 participants, we shove off the shore, we take off paddling, and every 10 feet, there's another alligator on the shoreline. It didn't help that the alligators were like smiling and winking at them, but lo and behold, all the visitors immediately started like saying like, "Hey, Ranger Daniel, how often do like alligators attack people, or are they gonna like pull us out of the canoes?" And after receiving maybe the third or fourth question, I was like, "Everybody, let's raft up. I just wanted to address everybody all together. I'm a park ranger. You have nothing to fear, right?" I totally didn't say that. That would have been way too bold. But I situated myself in this little solo canoe facing them. And as I was facing them, I started going into this rant of regurgitating everything that I'd heard all the older rangers say about, the statistics. I started talking about their physiology, how they're beautifully adapted to water. Stay away from them. They'll stay away from you. I gave them this long spiel, and all of a sudden, as I was ending, I grabbed my paddle and I addressed them again. Everybody feel good now? Everybody feel confident? And everybody, nodded. They assured me, yeah, we're good to go. So I grabbed my paddle, and no sooner than I touched my paddle, behind me, I hear this noise, and this woman straight in front of me, her eyes got huge and her mouth dropped open, and all the hairs on the back of my neck stood up because I knew whatever it was going to be bad. And I spin around in my seat and I look, and so we have a lot of alligators there. We also have this massive 13-foot like American crocodile that's just
Oh.
huge, like couldn't wrap your arms around them, kind of big, just finger-sized teeth, this like 3 foot long snout, right? And it's just barely moving its tail in this like majestic kind of back and forth pattern, and propelling itself through the water, heading right towards me. And then it started to dive underwater. And as it was diving underwater and I was watching it disappear, and it was heading like right towards and underneath my boat, in that moment, I kind of felt like the singled out bird from the flock. Like I felt like I was the isolated. And keep in mind, I had just told them and spent 10 minutes reassuring everybody, you have nothing to fear, right? And but this an instance of this crocodile surfacing and then heading towards me. I had this like panic attack. Uh, I developed a theory that nobody's fully capable of controlling their vocalizations during high stress situations in that moment. And I just started belting out this like high pitched wailing scream, and I took off
Run for
paddling.
your life!
I took off paddling as fast as I could away from the crocodile, trying to get myself like up alongside of my group in their canoes because I felt safety with numbers, right?
Right.
Anyways, I lost that entire crowd because they were like, "What the heck was that?" And I was like, "Did you see that? It got so close to me, right?" They were like, "You said we didn't have anything to fear," and I was like,
They're like, we're going back. We're going back.
That's never happened before. It never happened." So yeah, that was probably just a one-off where the crocodile surfaced, wanted to grab a gasp of air, and then dove underwater because we were there. But still, it was too close for comfort, for my comfort, please. That was,
Oh, that is hysterical. I have tears
thank
coming
you
out of
for
my eyes.
Thank you for sharing that. That's great. Thank you for sharing that. That's a good
Yes.
story.
Oh, that was awesome.
And I don't know that anybody else would have acted any bit different.
Right. I would have Jesus walked on the water.
I would have been like, every man for yourself.
I lied.
Statistics are for a reason.
There's always that one person.
Yeah, there's always the other side of the statistic. But all right, well,
Right.
thank you. So, in the last question now I've asked every ranger that we've had on the show this question. I did give you a little bit of an idea of what I was going to be asking you before we come on the air. So you've got a little bit of advantage of some of the other rangers, and that is if you were retiring today, or we'll say tomorrow, and you're never going to return to Everglades for whatever reason. What's the last thing you would do in the national park there? Just kind of have
Your last hurrah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
your last hurrah of Everglade.
and that's a very easy question for me. It's paddling the Wilderness Waterway again. Do it one last time. I've already done it several times, but yeah, it's a majestic experience. Going to sleep to the sound of dolphins swimming around the Chickee, or
Wow.
even going to sleep during the breeding season of in the distance, hearing this noise of the alligator
Yeah.
bell ring. As long as they stay away from me, it's pretty majestic. Or like fish leaping and stuff like that. Seeing the stars out there, it's really kind of an awesome experience. For me, it's paddling the Wilderness Waterway.
Wow, that's incredible.
That sounds very, very cool.
It does. It sounds very, very cool.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. We appreciate it. We know you've got a lot going on, and our listeners and viewers on YouTube, thank you very much for coming on, and we appreciate it. Baby, you want to take us out?
Yes, yes. So thank you so much, Ranger Daniel, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Talking about, this has been great. We appreciate you coming on and talking about some of the great things to do there in Everglades National Park in southern Florida. And we want to thank all of you out there for joining us in here today on the RV Destinations podcast, whether you're joining us on the audio version only or you've joined us on YouTube and you can see our happy, shiny, smiley faces. Mine, albeit, is kind of covered with a little bit of dry, crusty stuff, but I'm pushing through. I'm making it. So we just want to thank you all for joining us here today. And please rate, review, and subscribe to the RV Destinations podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. And be sure to hit that subscribe button on YouTube so you're always up to date with our latest podcast and the latest information that we are putting out there for you. And be sure to check out our website at rvdestinationsmagazine.com, where we are always putting up new and free, FREE, destination content for you. So, and if you use the code podcast20, podcast20 at checkout, when you subscribe, you're going to save 20% off any of our subscriptions. So we just want to thank you all again for joining us today.
Be safe.
Safe travels, y'all.